was a balmy day on July 27th, 1983 at about 4:30 in the morning when a little speck of human was born in the shitty town of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. That was me! And I maybe should have picked a better day to be born, because the outside world was in a descent of madness that almost led us to World War III. Since early 1983, Soviet and American relations were at their worst since the Cuban Missile Crisis. This would all come to a head on November 11th, 1983 with an event called Able Archer. But how did we get here? In America, Ronald Reagan was president, and he did some things that kind of pissed off the Soviets. First, he called them an evil empire, which pissed them off, and rightly so. 2 weeks later, he announced the Star Wars initiative that, if it was ever implemented, would render the Soviet nuclear arsenal completely obsolete. And then to make things worse, Reagan then deployed the new mid-range Pershing II to Western Europe, which could hit Moscow in 8 minutes. This kind of made them nervous, and they were already, paranoid. Okay, to call them paranoid is an understatement. They were at their highest level of paranoia since Stalin was in office. Now they were being led by some guy named Yuri Andropov, who was about 2 weeks from death and looked like a skeleton with some skin attached. And another reason why they were so paranoid was the KGB, who are not known for their rationality. They looked at these threats from Reagan as a code that he was going to launch a nuclear attack that never happened. But to say that the Soviets were completely innocent in all of this is an understatement. They had even bigger fuck-ups than the West. Their first big one was shooting down the Korean Airlines Flight 007, which accidentally flew into their airspace. They tried to cover it up by saying it was a spy plane, and they went so far as re-recording the pilot in his cockpit and imitating the noise of the outside with an electric razor. Seriously. Then came September 26, 1983. On this night, the Soviet shitty satellites rang out with an attack from the US. Luckily for all of humanity, Stanislav Petrov was the only man in either country that had a brain and knew how to use it. He ignored their stupid computer because he knew it was a false alarm. And lo and behold, we come to find out that the satellite had registered high-altitude clouds, not nuclear weapons. And what did Petrov get for saving humanity? The Soviets blamed him for turning off the computer, and they kicked him out of the army. So that brings us to November, when NATO decided to launch Able Archer. These sort of war games happened all the time, but for some reason, the Soviets thought this was just a cover for World War III. They didn't want to get caught with their pants down like they had been during the Great Patriotic War with the invasion of Germany. But the ironic thing is, when NATO finished, there was nothing. There was no war. We come to find out later that the Soviets had actually moved to a state of war and were in position with their fingers on the button to shoot nukes at the West. Luckily, that did not happen. And as 1983 ended, Reagan would lighten his stance following the revelation of these two almost nuclear wars. Yuri Andropov would be dead by February 84, and by the end of the decade, the Soviet Union was gone. As for me, I've lived a long life, so let's hope it stays that way because living's kind of cool.
Yo, subscribe today.